Stop scrolling for a moment, because what you're about to hear is not comfortable, but it is true. And if you listen until the end, it will permanently change how you see attraction, age, and power in relationships. Most people are lying to you about what younger women are actually drawn to. Not intentionally, just unconsciously. They repeat surface-level ideas about looks, money, excitement, and status because those are easy to talk about. But the real reasons operate much deeper. At a psychological level, most men never examine, and most women rarely articulate out loud. Here's the uncomfortable truth: attraction is not logical, and it's definitely not fair. It follows emotional patterns, nervous system responses, and unconscious cues that society doesn't like to admit exist. And older men who understand this don't compete with younger men. They quietly outgrow the competition entirely. If you've ever wondered why some men become more magnetic with age while others fade into irrelevance, if you've noticed younger women losing interest in chaos and craving something they can actually rest in, if you've felt that there is a kind of masculine presence that doesn't need to prove itself, yet commands attention effortlessly, this video is for you. Because once you understand what really creates attraction, you stop trying to impress. You stop chasing validation. You stop playing games that exhaust you emotionally. And here's the warning: once you hear this, you can't unhear it. You'll start noticing it everywhere: who gets respect, who gets desire, and who gets ignored. You'll see why some men speak less, but are listened to more. Why some men don't pursue, yet are chosen. Stay until the end, because this isn't motivation for your ego, it's clarity for your mind. And once you see the truth, attraction stops being confusing and starts becoming inevitable. Let's talk about emotional stability, because this is where most conversations about attraction become shallow, and this is also where the real truth sits, quietly ignored. Younger women are not addicted to chaos. They are conditioned into it. There's a difference. Chaos feels exciting at first because it spikes emotion, it creates urgency, it mimics passion, but over time it drains. And once a woman becomes emotionally intelligent or simply emotionally tired, she starts craving something very different. She starts craving regulation. Emotional stability is not the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. And that distinction matters more than people realize. An emotionally stable man doesn't suppress emotion, nor does he leak it everywhere. He doesn't turn every disagreement into a crisis, and he doesn't collapse when things don't go his way. He can feel disappointment without becoming resentful. He can feel attraction without becoming desperate. He can feel uncertainty without becoming controlling. And for a younger woman navigating a world that constantly pulls her nervous system in 100 directions, that steadiness feels like oxygen. Here's something uncomfortable but true: many women are overstimulated long before they are fulfilled. Social media, dating apps, fast-paced interactions, constant validation, it all creates noise. Emotional highs followed by emotional crashes, attention without attunement, excitement without safety. When a woman encounters a man who is emotionally grounded, something inside her slows down, and that slowing down is not boredom, it's relief. Relief is underrated in attraction conversations, but psychologically, relief is where trust begins. An older man who has learned to regulate his emotions sends a powerful signal without saying a word: you don't need to manage me. And that is huge. Because many women, especially younger ones, are unconsciously tired of emotional labor. They are tired of decoding moods, calming insecurities, reassuring egos, and walking on eggshells. Emotional stability removes that burden. When a man can self-soothe, self-reflect, and self-correct, he becomes emotionally safe. And emotional safety is not the opposite of desire. It's the container that allows desire to deepen rather than burn out. This is why so many younger women initially chase emotional intensity and later feel empty. Intensity gives fireworks, stability gives warmth. Fireworks impress the eyes, warmth sustains the body. An older man who has lived long enough to understand this doesn't try to impress through emotional extremes. He doesn't provoke jealousy to feel powerful. He doesn't withdraw to feel desired. He doesn't test loyalty through inconsistency. He shows up as he is, consistently. Consistency might sound boring on the surface, but psychologically, consistency builds trust. And trust allows attraction to relax into something richer and more embodied. Here's where philosophy enters the picture. Human beings are wired to seek what feels familiar until familiarity becomes painful. Many younger women grow up around emotional unpredictability, parents' environments, relationships that were inconsistent. Chaos becomes normal, and what's normal feels attractive, even when it hurts. But healing shifts attraction. As awareness grows, the nervous system begins to seek regulation rather than stimulation, and emotionally stable men become profoundly attractive not because they are thrilling, but because they are grounding. A grounded man doesn't rush intimacy. He doesn't confuse urgency with connection. He understands pacing. He lets things unfold naturally, not because he lacks desire, but because he respects it. That restraint is magnetic. Younger women often notice this before they can explain it. They feel calmer around him. They think more clearly. They don't feel the need to perform or impress. Their body relaxes. Their breathing slows. Their mind quiets. That is attraction at the nervous system level, not the ego level. And the nervous system doesn't lie. An emotionally stable man also doesn't outsource his identity to the relationship. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He doesn't make a woman responsible for his happiness. That emotional independence creates space instead of pressure. Space is essential for desire. When a woman feels emotionally crowded, desire shuts down. When she feels emotionally free, desire opens. Emotional stability creates freedom. This is where age plays a role, not because of years, but because of experience. Emotional regulation is often forged through loss, failure, disappointment, and reflection. Men who haven't been forced to sit with discomfort often avoid it. Men who have survived it tend to respect it. An older man who has faced his own shadows is less reactive. He doesn't project unresolved pain onto the woman in front of him. He listens without defensiveness. He responds rather than reacts. That emotional maturity communicates something rare. I can hold complexity, and women are complex, not as a flaw but as a reality. A man who can hold emotional nuance without becoming overwhelmed is deeply attractive, because he doesn't try to simplify or dismiss what he doesn't immediately understand. He stays present. Presence is not passive, it's active containment. It's the ability to remain engaged without being destabilized. That quality is felt instantly. Younger women often don't consciously say, "I want an emotionally stable man." What they say is, "I feel calm with him," or "I feel like myself around him," or "I don't feel anxious when I'm with him." Those are emotional stability translating into attraction. And this is important. Emotional stability does not mean emotional flatness. A stable man can be playful, passionate, intense, and deeply affectionate. The difference is that his emotions don't control him. He controls how he expresses them. That self-mastery is attractive because it signals strength without threat. A man who is emotionally unstable can feel exciting at first, but he eventually feels unsafe. A man who is emotionally stable might feel unfamiliar at first, but he becomes addictive in the healthiest way. Because safety allows desire to grow roots. Roots take time, but they last. This is why emotionally evolved older men don't need to chase younger women. Their calm draws attention naturally. In a world of emotional volatility, stability stands out. And once a woman experiences what it feels like to be with a man who is emotionally anchored, it's very hard to go back to chaos. Chaos loses its charm once peace is felt. So here's the reflection I want to leave you with. Attraction is not about how intensely someone makes you feel. It's about how regulated you feel in their presence. And the man who learns to master his inner world doesn't just become attractive, he becomes unforgettable. Let's go deeper into something most people misunderstand completely: presence and inner confidence. Not the loud kind, not the performative kind, but the quiet, grounded confidence that doesn't ask to be noticed and yet cannot be ignored. Most men are taught to show confidence. Very few are taught to build it. Younger women, especially perceptive ones, can feel the difference immediately. Inner confidence is not about dominating a room, telling the best stories, or having the sharpest comebacks. That kind of confidence is fragile. It depends on reaction. It collapses when ignored, and psychologically, it creates pressure rather than attraction. Real confidence has weight, and weight doesn't move fast. An older man who has developed inner confidence doesn't rush conversations. He doesn't rush intimacy. He doesn't rush to define himself. He allows silence to exist without panicking. And silence is where presence becomes visible. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because silence exposes insecurity. When a man fills every gap with words, jokes, explanations, or validation-seeking behavior, what he's really saying is, please don't look too closely. A man who is present doesn't need to distract. Presence means he is fully where he is, not strategizing, not performing, not scanning for approval. His attention is undivided, and that alone is rare in a distracted world. Younger women feel this as focus, and focused attention feels intimate even before anything romantic happens. Here's the psychological truth: attention is the currency of desire, and a man who can offer clean attention, without agenda, without hunger, without neediness, immediately stands apart. Inner confidence allows that. A confident man doesn't chase reactions. He doesn't try to impress. He doesn't need to be liked by everyone in the room. And paradoxically, this makes him more interesting. Why? Because desire grows in space, not pressure. When a man is overly expressive, overly eager, overly available, the space collapses. Mystery disappears. Not because he revealed too much information, but because he revealed too much need. Older men who have done the internal work understand this intuitively. They are not withholding. They are self-contained. Self-containment is attractive because it signals emotional self-sufficiency. A younger woman doesn't feel pulled into managing his mood, validating his worth, or regulating his insecurity. She feels free to be herself, and freedom is fertile ground for attraction. Another important distinction: inner confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud because it's compensating. Confidence is quiet because it's settled. An arrogant man needs to win conversations. A confident man is comfortable learning. An arrogant man takes disagreement personally. A confident man stays curious. That difference is immediately felt. Younger women are often surrounded by men who talk at them, explaining, correcting, performing intelligence. An older man with inner confidence doesn't need to prove how much he knows. He listens. And when he speaks, it's deliberate. Deliberate speech signals clarity of thought. Clarity is attractive because it feels safe. It feels grounded. It feels like the man knows himself. And self-knowledge is deeply magnetic. Let's talk about posture, not physical, but psychological posture. A man with inner confidence doesn't lean forward emotionally. He doesn't lean back in detachment either. He stands upright internally. He meets people where they are. This balanced posture creates a subtle sense of authority, not dominance, authority. Authority comes from alignment. When a man's values, actions, and words are congruent. Younger women are highly sensitive to incongruence. They can sense when a man says one thing but feels another. Inner confidence removes that dissonance. Another uncomfortable truth: many men over-explain because they don't trust their own worth to stand on its own. Over-explaining is often an unconscious apology for existing. A confident man doesn't justify himself unnecessarily. He doesn't argue his boundaries. He states them calmly and lets the world respond. That calm firmness is attractive because it communicates self-respect. And here's something rarely said out loud: self-respect teaches others how to treat you without force. Younger women respond to that instinctively. not because they want control, but because clarity feels grounding. Ambiguity creates anxiety. Emotional certainty creates attraction. Presence also shows up in how a man handles attention. When he has it, he doesn't exploit it. When he doesn't chase it. He's not performing masculinity, he's inhabiting it. That's why older men who are present don't need tricks, lines, or strategies. They are not trying to manufacture desire. They allow desire to emerge, and desire always emerges in the presence of grounded confidence. Philosophically, this connects to a deeper principle. The most powerful things in life don't announce themselves. They are. A mountain doesn't convince you of its size. The ocean doesn't explain its depth. They exist, and their existence commands respect. A man with inner confidence operates the same way. Younger women may not consciously articulate this, but they feel it as gravity. Something pulls them in without pressure. Something holds their attention without effort. And that gravity comes from a man who is not fragmented internally. Fragmented men are exhausting. They are one person when confident, another when insecure, another when challenged. A present man is consistent across emotional states. Consistency builds trust. Trust deepens attraction. Let's also be clear, presence requires discipline. It's not passive. It takes work to regulate attention, to resist compulsive validation, to stay grounded when challenged. That discipline is attractive because it signals mastery. Mastery over oneself is far more compelling than control over others. An older man who has cultivated inner confidence doesn't react impulsively. He pauses, he observes, he chooses. Choice is power, and women are drawn to men who choose rather than react. Younger women, especially those growing in self-awareness, don't want emotional unpredictability disguised as passion. They want steadiness that doesn't dull desire but refines it. Inner confidence refines desire. It slows it down, deepens it, makes it intentional. So if there's one thing to reflect on here, it's this: the most attractive presence you can offer is not how loudly you assert yourself, but how completely you are at home within yourself. And the moment a man stops trying to be impressive and starts being grounded, his presence begins to speak louder than words ever could. Now let's talk about something that cannot be faked, rushed, or borrowed: life experience. This is where attraction moves beyond surface chemistry and into something far more enduring. Because experience is not about how many years you've lived. It's about how deeply you've paid attention to what life has tried to teach you. Younger women are far more perceptive than they are often given credit for. They can sense the difference between a man who has talked about growth and a man who has actually been shaped by it. One speaks in concepts, the other speaks from the body, and the body never lies. Experience shows up in how a man reacts under pressure. It shows up in how he handles disappointment, rejection, or disagreement. It shows up in whether he becomes defensive or reflective, reactive or responsive. These moments reveal far more than charm ever could. An older man who has lived through failure carries a certain steadiness, not because he's invincible, but because he's survived being broken. That survival changes a man. It strips away illusions. It humbles the ego. And if integrated properly, it produces depth rather than bitterness. Depth is attractive because it feels real. Younger women often encounter men who are still performing versions of themselves, versions that collapse when challenged, versions that need validation to stay intact. A man with experience has fewer masks, not because he's given up, but because he's learned which parts of himself are worth keeping. This is where trust begins. Trust doesn't come from perfection. It comes from coherence, from knowing that who a man is today is not an act that disappears tomorrow. A man who has lived through loss understands impermanence. He doesn't cling desperately. He doesn't manipulate to hold on. He values connection without trying to control it. That emotional maturity creates safety, and safety allows vulnerability. Younger women are often guarded, not because they lack openness, but because they've learned that not everyone can hold what they share. A man with experience doesn't rush vulnerability. He respects it. He understands that emotional disclosure is not a performance but a process. That patience communicates wisdom. Wisdom is not intelligence. Intelligence impresses the mind. Wisdom settles the nervous system. A man who has lived long enough to separate the two knows when to speak and when to stay quiet. Silence, when grounded, is a sign of confidence and depth. Another important truth: experience teaches a man to see patterns, not just in life, but in people. He recognizes emotional cycles. He notices behaviors beneath words. He understands that moods pass, that reactions are often about fear, not truth. This awareness makes him less reactive and more compassionate. Compassion is often misunderstood as softness. In reality, compassion requires strength. It takes strength to not take everything personally. It takes strength to stay open instead of defensive. It takes strength to respond with clarity rather than ego. Younger women feel this strength as emotional containment. Containment means a man can hold complexity without needing to fix, dismiss, or dominate it. He doesn't rush to solutions. He listens to understand, not to win. That ability is rare. Many men want to be admired. Experienced men value being trusted. Trust creates a different kind of intimacy, one that doesn't burn fast and disappear but deepens with time. Life experience also teaches discernment. A man who has made mistakes knows the cost of poor choices. He doesn't romanticize chaos. He doesn't mistake drama for connection. He chooses peace not because he's afraid of intensity, but because he understands its consequences. That discernment is attractive because it signals emotional intelligence. Younger women often feel pulled toward men who make them feel seen beyond their appearance. A man with experience sees the person beneath the presentation. He notices tone shifts, emotional cues, moments of hesitation. This attunement creates a sense of being understood without explanation. And being understood is deeply seductive. Another thing experience does: it softens rigidity. Men who have been humbled by life are less likely to cling to rigid identities. They are more open, more curious, more adaptable. They know that certainty is often an illusion. This flexibility allows for healthier dynamics. A man who has experienced real loss understands gratitude differently. He values presence. He doesn't take connection for granted. That reverence shows in how he treats people. Respect is attractive. Not performative respect, but embodied respect. Younger women notice how a man speaks about his past, not to judge the past itself, but to understand his relationship with it. A man who is still resentful is still stuck. A man who can reflect without bitterness has moved forward. Integration is the key. Experience without integration creates cynicism. Experience with integration creates wisdom. A wise man doesn't use his past to justify harm. He uses it to prevent it. This is why experienced men often create a sense of calm authority. Not because they know everything, but because they know what doesn't matter. They don't waste energy on ego battles. They invest in meaning. Meaning is attractive because it gives direction. Younger women are often navigating identity, purpose, and growth. A man who has walked that path without losing himself becomes a quiet guide, not by instruction, but by example. Example is powerful because it invites rather than demands. And here's the truth many avoid: life experience makes a man less afraid of endings. And paradoxically, that makes him more present in beginnings. He doesn't rush to lock things down. He allows connection to unfold naturally. That lack of desperation creates space. Space allows attraction to breathe. So, when a younger woman is drawn to an older man with depth, it's not because she wants someone to lead her life. It's because she recognizes a man who has learned how to walk with life rather than fight it. And that wisdom feels grounding. So here's the reflection to carry with you: experience doesn't make a man attractive by default. But when experience is integrated with self-awareness, it creates a depth that can't be replicated. And once you encounter that depth, surface-level attraction no longer satisfies. Let's bring this to the final layer, because this is where everything comes together: clarity and emotional leadership. Not control, not dominance, leadership. And this is one of the most misunderstood forces of attraction. Younger women are not looking for a man to manage them. They are looking for a man who can manage himself. That distinction changes everything. Clarity is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in how a man makes decisions, how he sets boundaries, and how he moves through uncertainty without collapsing or becoming rigid. A man with clarity knows what matters to him, and because of that, he doesn't need constant validation from the outside world. That inner orientation is deeply stabilizing. Younger women live in a world of endless options, opinions, and noise. Choice overload creates anxiety, not freedom. When a woman encounters a man who has direction, not arrogance, not inflexibility, but grounded direction, her nervous system relaxes. She doesn't have to guess where she stands. She doesn't have to decode mixed signals. Clarity removes confusion, and confusion is one of the biggest killers of attraction. An older man with clarity doesn't send emotional mixed messages. His words align with his actions. His intentions don't shift depending on mood or attention. This congruence builds trust at a deep psychological level. Trust grows when reality feels predictable in the healthiest sense. Emotional leadership begins with self-leadership. A man who can regulate his emotions, take responsibility for his choices, and stand by his values creates a sense of internal order. And internal order translates into relational stability. This is not about being dominant. It's about being dependable. Dependability is often dismissed as boring, but in reality, it's rare. Many people promise consistency but deliver chaos. A man who actually lives his principles stands out immediately. Younger women are not impressed by men who talk about ambition. They are drawn to men who embody direction. Direction doesn't mean everything is figured out. It means the man is oriented. He knows his why, even if the how is still unfolding. That orientation feels safe. Emotional leadership also shows up in how a man handles conflict. He doesn't escalate unnecessarily. He doesn't avoid discomfort either. He addresses issues directly, calmly, and without shaming. He doesn't punish vulnerability. He doesn't weaponize silence. This ability to hold tension without creating damage is a powerful signal of maturity. Younger women are often navigating emotional environments where conflict feels unpredictable or unsafe. A man who can disagree without destabilizing the connection becomes incredibly attractive because he proves that closeness doesn't require walking on eggshells. That creates freedom. Another important aspect of leadership is boundaries. A man with clarity doesn't overextend himself to please others. He doesn't sacrifice his values for approval. He knows when to say yes and when to say no. Clear boundaries are not rejection, they are structure. Structure is comforting. It creates a container in which intimacy can grow. Without structure, relationships become chaotic, emotionally draining, and confusing. Younger women are drawn to men who provide structure not by control, but by consistency. Emotional leadership also means taking responsibility for impact. An older man who is emotionally evolved doesn't hide behind excuses. He can say, "I was wrong," without losing his sense of self. He can repair instead of defend. Repair builds intimacy faster than perfection ever could. This level of accountability signals strength. Weakness hides. Strength owns. Clarity also shows up in purpose. Not necessarily career success, but meaning. A man who knows what he stands for carries himself differently. He's not pulled in every direction by trends, opinions, or external pressure. That groundedness creates a sense of calm authority. Authority here doesn't mean superiority. It means inner alignment. When a man is aligned, his presence feels steady. He doesn't need to micromanage outcomes. He trusts his process. Younger women feel this as emotional certainty. Certainty doesn't mean predictability in a dull sense. It means reliability in character. She knows who she's dealing with, and that knowledge creates space for attraction to deepen. Another subtle but powerful point Emotional leadership allows a woman to soften when she doesn't have to constantly assess risk, manage dynamics, or stay guarded. She can relax into her natural emotional rhythms. Softness is not weakness, it's openness. And openness is where connection flourishes. Many younger women are strong by necessity. They are used to self-protection. A man who leads emotionally doesn't take that strength as a challenge. He honors it and offers balance. Balance is attractive because it feels complementary, not competitive. Leadership also means being comfortable with responsibility, not just practical responsibility, but emotional responsibility. A man who understands that his words and actions affect others moves with care. Care is attractive when it's grounded, not performative. An older man with clarity doesn't overpromise. He underpromises and overdelivers. He understands the value of trust over time. He's not trying to impress in the moment. He's building something real. That long-term orientation is rare in a fast-paced world, and younger women notice. They may not articulate it immediately, but they feel the difference between a man who is reacting to life and a man who is responding to it. Responding requires pause, awareness, choice. Choice is leadership. So when we talk about why younger women are drawn to older men, this is a central reason. Emotional leadership removes chaos from connection. It replaces anxiety with clarity. It replaces confusion with direction. And direction allows desire to settle and grow. This is not about age as a number. It's about evolution. A younger man with clarity and leadership will be attractive. An older man without it will not. Age only amplifies what's already there. So here's the final reflection: to sit with attraction deepens where clarity exists. And the man who learns to lead himself with honesty, responsibility, and purpose doesn't need to chase connection. He becomes the kind of presence others choose to walk beside.